Bandeham Shri Guru Shiyatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishikam Vitam Sya Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnanachana Shalakya Chakshuramyajam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supurakam Gurganara Sisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanagam Govinda Abhidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktiyan Vidam Sundaram Mande Vishwagurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Premna Vibija Pranam Devam Divyatanam Suchandavaranam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sarekavaranam Vairagya Vidyam Buddhim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shubharam Marika Sharanam Yashishvara Sridharam Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaurata Vishay Namah. So we're reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the hidden treasure of the sweet absolute, with translation and commentary by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj. And this is translation from Bengali into English by Sri Swarupananda Prabhu. And this is chapter 6. Dhyana-yoga, the path of meditation. Okay. Yuktahara viharasya, yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta swapna vabodai ashay, yogo bhavati dukkha. Yuktahara viharasya, yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta swapna vabodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. For a person who eats, relaxes, and works in a regulated way, and who keeps regular hours in proper measure, his practice of yoga dispels all his suffering. For a person who eats, relaxes, and works in a regulated way, and who keeps regular hours in proper measure, his practice of yoga dispels all his suffering. Yada vini yatam shitam atmani eva vatishtate nishpriya sarva kamebhyo yukta iti uchate tara. Yada vini yatam shitam atmani eva vatishtate nishpriya sarva kamebhyo yukta iti uchate tara. When a yogi withdraws the mind from mundane thoughts and centers it unwaveringly in the self, then free from mundane desires, he is said to be actually situated in yoga, or link with the Absolute. When a yogi withdraws the mind from mundane thoughts and centers it unwaveringly in the self, then free from mundane desires, he is said to be actually situated in yoga, or link with the Absolute. So this word yoga, it means just this, link with the Absolute. Yoga is not just a series of exercises, or meditation is not just to control, not to just make the mind peaceful, but actually the practice of yoga is to be able to enable one to be able to have an engagement in spiritual life. So for us, the highest form of yoga will be Bhakti yoga, when one understands that the jiva soul, or the soul, is the eternal servant of the Supreme, of Krishna. Then one will engage all one's endeavors in satisfying Krishna. One is not working for the satisfaction of one's own senses or of one's own mind. One is engaged in trying to serve and satisfy Krishna, and that's the purpose of Bhakti yoga. Yata dipo nivatasto ningate Sopama spriha yogino yata chitasya yunjato yogam atmana yata dipo nivatasto ningate sopama sprita ningate sopama smrita yogino yata chitasya yunjato yogam atmana. It is said, as a lamp flame situated in a windless place does not waver, similarly the mind of the yogi absorbed in the self never flickers in its concentration. It is said, as a lamp flame situated in a windless place does not waver, similarly the mind of the yogi absorbed in the self never flickers in its concentration. So, as we've mentioned, the purpose of yoga is not for any mundane attainment, neither of the senses or the body to improve the physical force of the body or to make the mind peaceful, but rather the purpose of yoga is to be completely aloof from the demands of the body and demands of the mind, and to be able to concentrate the mind and the senses in the service of the Lord. So, in that way, one who has that proper equilibrium, proper engagement, then that person will not be distracted, just like a flame cannot be. If there's no wind, the flame will not flicker or move, so the mind will remain engaged, always in the service of the Lord. Yatro paramate chitam nirudam yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pashyan atmani tushyati sukam adyantikam yatad buddhi grayam atindriyam vediyatra na chaivayam stitas chalati tatvata yam labdva chaparam labam manyate nadikam data yasmin stito na dukena gurunapi vichayate tam vidya dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samgitam sa nischayena yoktavyo yoga nirvina chetasa. The mind controlled by yoga practice is tranquil, pacified by detachment from mundane association. The yogi remains satisfied in the Lord alone, directly seeing the supersoul through his purified consciousness. In his spiritual enlightenment, he tastes transcendental eternal bliss. He never deviates from the reality. He considers that there is no greater gain in this world. He is undisturbed by even the worst suffering. Know that the attainments of such a state in which all association with unhappiness is severed is called yoga. Yoga must be practiced with perseverance and a heart that is never discouraged. So this is a vision which we have of our acharyas, such as Srila Govinda Maharaj, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Their mind cannot be deviated at all from the service of the Lord, and they're always concentrated and focused, particularly in serving the wishes and the directions of their spiritual master. And as Srila Sridhar Maharaj has explained, this is what it means when we say that all wealth is meant for Narayan, all enjoyment is meant for Krishna, and all pratishta is meant for Gurudev. So wealth, the word is kanak, is all meant for Narayan, the husband of the goddess of fortune, the husband of Lakshmi, and all enjoyment is meant for Krishna. In fact, we always see that in Vrindavan, everyone is trying to give pleasure to Krishna, and that all pratishtha is meant for Gurudev. And we see how that works in the sense that if some fame comes to my guru, he will pass that fame on immediately to his guru. And the explanation given by Srila Maharaj is that we are like retailers, and Gurudev is a wholesaler, and we're getting everything that we're using in the service of Gurudev. We're using the chanting of the holy name. We're also utilizing the preaching or prachar, and like this. So, whether it's the holy name or preaching, everything we're getting from Gurudev. He is said to be like the wholesaler. He has the warehouse, and then he's giving us what we utilize in his service. And we're going out and trying to spread the Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. We're engaged in chanting the holy names with kartals, mridangas. We're doing Harinam Sankirtan. Persons are hearing, persons join in with us. Sometimes they also join with us and themselves become adepts of this mission. And we're going out and trying to. This is the work of a person engaged in Bhakti yoga or devotional service. Said the Madhyamadikari, he or she makes friends with the devotees, then worships the Lord, makes friends with the devotees, preaches to the innocent, or tries to give some message to the innocent persons about their actual relationship with Krishna, that they're not of any nationality or not of any race or not of any economic division, but rather they're all eternal spirit souls, and the soul is the eternal servant of the Lord. We're going out in many ways trying to talk to persons about their relationship with the Lord. And that's what we mean by when we say preaching, is trying to inform others about what is the actual purpose of life, because we are all spirit souls, and they're just as there are activities of the body, there are also activities of the soul, and that is meant for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees. So we are preaching to the innocent, and we are avoiding the association of those persons who are openly antagonistic, and we can say who are very much against hearing of the glories of the Lord or hearing of service to the Lord. So it's like that we are worshiping the Lord, befriending the devotees, then preaching and informing those who are innocent and open to hearing about devotional service, and we're avoiding those persons who are antagonistic and inimical. That is, it is said, that is a Madhyamadikari, that is a second-class devotee. And the highest devotee, that person sees everyone, everywhere, engaged in the service of the Lord, regardless of what their position is. So as I was mentioning, the activities of what we're doing, being that naturally we're engaged in the service of the Lord, and we're making friends with the devotees, those who are joining with us, and those who are our associates and friends. We're preaching to the innocent, and we are avoiding dealing with the people who are openly antagonistic. So those are the conditions. And Srila Maharaj has explained, in doing so, we are naturally giving all fame to Gurudev. Anything that's happened And anything that is coming to us in terms of someone is speaking well of us or glorifying us, we try to pass that fame on to Gurudev. And we consider that everything we're getting, everything that we have comes from Gurudev. So in this way, those who are actually, we see our acharyas and those who are our instructors of giving it, we see them as what is being described here in this description, that persons who can't be deviated for a moment, who are always, their every word, their every action, their every thought, everything that they do and everything they say, everything is directed for the service of the Lord. So the mind controlled by yoga practice is tranquil, pacified by detachment from mundane association. The yogi remains satisfied in the Lord alone, directly seeing the Supersoul through his purified consciousness. In his spiritual enlightenment, he tastes transcendental, eternal bliss. He never deviates from the reality. He considers that there is no greater gain in this world. He is undisturbed by even the worst suffering. Know that the attainment of such a state in which all association with unhappiness is severed is called yoga. Yoga must be practiced with perseverance and a heart that is never discouraged. And we can see a good example of that mood is that of Prahlad Maharaj. Although he's very young, and his father was openly very much demoniac, very much trying to always go against the Lord and his devotees, and even his young son, who was from his birth a devotee, was antagonistic towards his young son Prahlad. Prahlad was always, he's an example of what is mentioned here, meditation, because it is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. We can say Vishnu Smaranam is that meditation, always remembering the Lord and never forgetting him and always engaged in his service. And the example that is given in the scriptures of a person who is engaged in Vishnu Smaranam, always remembering the Lord, that is Prahlad Maharaj. And Sankalpa Prabhavan Kamams Chaktva Sarvan Aseshata Manasai Vendriya Gramam Viniyamya Samantata. Sankalpa Prabhavan Kamams Chaktva Sarvan Aseshata Mana Saivendriya Gramam Viniyamya Samantata. To practice yoga, one must abandon all thoughts that give rise to desires, and using the mind, withdraw the senses from all material objects. To practice yoga, one must abandon all thoughts that give rise to desires, and using the mind, withdraw the senses from all material objects. So in the very beginning of the Gita, we hear that there are some persons. What is daytime for the conditioned souls is nighttime for those who are awake to spiritual realization, and what is daytime for those awake to spiritual realization will be nighttime for the conditioned souls. In other words, those who are conditioned, those who are trying to always look for happiness in this world from the senses and the objects of the senses, their daytime, that's what they live for, and their nighttime, they're completely asleep in terms of the matter of spiritual realization. They have no awakenment to that. They're not awake to that. And what is daytime for the devotees, when they're awake, is in the matter of service to the Lord and engagement in what is spiritual realization. That is their daytime, and what their nighttime is what is normal for materialists. Their nighttime is they're not interested in trying to extract some enjoyment from this mundane world. So to practice yoga, one must abandon all thoughts that give rise to desires, and using the mind withdraw the senses from all material objects. Shanai shanar uparamed budya driti grihitaya atma samstam mana kritva na kinchid api chintayet. Shanai shanar uparamed budya driti grihitaya atma samsta mana kritva na kinchit api chintayet. Text number 25. By steadying the intelligence, one should gradually still the mind and focus it within the self alone. By steadying the intelligence, one should gradually still the mind and focus it within the self alone. So above the senses are the mind, and above the mind is the intelligence. So normally people utilize the mind in devising different means for serving and satisfying their senses. But in this case, the mind is being controlled by intelligence, by buddhi. So the mind is controlling the senses, and the intelligence is properly directing the mind. Yato yato nischalati manas chanchalam ashtiram tatas tato niyam yaitad atmani eva vashamnayat. Yato yato nischalati manas chanchalam ashtiram tatas tato niyam yaitad atmani eva vashamnayat. The wavering and unsteady mind should be brought back from whatever mundane objects it pursues and be held within the self alone. The wavering and unsteady mind should be brought back from whatever mundane objects it pursues and be held within the self alone. So as we mentioned, this chapter is Jnana-yoga, and that is the path of meditation. So obviously, if someone's going to be meditating, or as we'll say, fixed in serving the Lord, one cannot allow one's mind to deviate one from engagement in the Lord's service. Vyavasayatmika yoga. All the mind and the senses have to be fixed in the service of the Lord. So the wavering and unsteady mind should be brought back from whatever mundane objects it pursues and be held within the self alone. Prashanta manasam yenam yoginam sukham uttamam upaiti shanta rajasam brahma bhutam akalmasham. The transcendental joy of self-realization comes to the yogi whose passions are quieted, who is peaceful-hearted, free from the defects of attachment, fear, and anger, and always situated in his spiritual nature. A transcendental joy of self-realization comes to the yogi whose passions are quieted and who is peaceful-hearted, free from the defects of attachment, fear, and anger, and always situated in the spiritual nature. And as we've mentioned, when one is contemplating enjoyment, that attachment forms, and from that attachment, if one cannot satisfy what one is what one is thinking about, whatever enjoyment one is contemplating, that not being able to attain that will cause one to become angry. So anger and fear are always related to being absorbed in always thinking about trying to enjoy the senses. Yunshan evam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmasha sukhena brahma samsparsham atyantam sukham ashnute. Thus absorbed in self-realization, the clean-hearted yogi easily attains the boundless ecstasy of contacting the divine. He realizes the supersoul. Such yoga is of a devotional nature. Thus absorbed in self-realization, the clean-hearted yogi easily attains the boundless ecstasy of contacting the divine. He realizes the supersoul. Such yoga is of a devotional nature. So there's Atma and Paramatma. We say Paramatma is a super soul. And we are Atma, we are Jivatmas, we are individual souls. And as Mahaprabhu explains, one can satisfy that natural relationship with the Lord because a soul is the eternal servant of the Lord. That is the constitutional nature of the soul. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains it as Jiva Swarupoi Krishna Nityadas. The soul is, by nature, is meant for the service of the Lord. So right now we only know of external or material activities. And that may be the activities for one in bodily consciousness. But we're souls, we're not these mundane senses and these mundane bodies. So somehow or other, if we are able to come to that realization, then we'll understand that the soul has its own level of enjoyment. The enjoyment of senses meeting up with the objects of the senses, anyone can experience that. That is a perception of somebody materially engaged. But the soul is a person, and the soul has a natural loving relationship with the Lord. And when we as souls are engaged in that loving relationship, then we can experience real happiness or real satisfaction. Thus absorbed in self-realization, the clean-hearted yogi easily attains the boundless ecstasy of contacting the divine. He realizes the supersoul. Such yoga is of a devotional nature. Wait. So we read 27 was Prashanta manasam yenam yoginam sukham uttamam upaiti shanta rajasam brahma bhutam akalmasham. Did we read that? Yes. From whatever?
Oh, maybe we didn't.
No, I believe I skipped that. Prashant. To practice yoga, one must abandon all thoughts to give rise to desires, and using the mind, withdraw the senses from all material objects. By steadying the intelligence, one should gradually still the mind and focus it within the self alone. So I don't remember. I think I skipped some verses here.
Maybe you skipped a page or something. Maybe it was a page.
Sankalpa prabhavan kamams chaktva sarvan aseshata manasai vendriya gramam viniyamya samantata. 24. To practice yoga, one must abandon all thoughts to give rise to desires, and using the mind, withdraw the senses from all material objects. We read that. Then 25 was Shanai Shanar Uparamed Budya Driti Grihitaya Atma Samstam Mana Kritva Na Kinchid Api Chintayet. By studying the intelligence, one should gradually still the mind and focus it within the self alone. By studying the intelligence, one should still the mind and focus it within the self alone. So we read that verse also. And then, yato nischalati manas chanshalam astira tatas tato dhyamyaitad atmani eva vashamnayet. Yato nischalati manas chanshalam astira tatas tato dhyamyaitad atmani eva vashamnayet. The wavering and unsteady mind should be brought back from whatever mundane objects it pursues and be held within the self alone. So we did read that.
Yes.
And then
That's the one we did read, 27.
we should have. Then I should have read this next one, which is Prashanta manasa yenam yoginam sukhamutamam upaiti shanta rajasam brahma bhutam makom asham prashanta manasam yenam yoginam sukham uttamam upaiti shanta rajasam brahma bhutam akamasham. The transcendental joy of self-realization comes to the yogi whose passions are quieted, who is peaceful-hearted, free from the defects of attachment, fear, and anger, and always situated in the spiritual nature. And I also read that one also. The transcendental joy of self-realization comes to the yogi whose passions are quieted, who is peaceful-hearted, free from the defects of attachment, fear, and anger, and always situated in the spiritual nature. Because I remember that term, peaceful-hearted, and free from the defects of attachment, fear, and anger, and always situated in the spiritual nature. So then we are on this verse. Yunjanivam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmasha sukhena brahma samsparsham atyantam sukham ashnute. Yunjanevam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmasha sukhena brahma samsparsham adyantam sukham ashnute. Thus absorbed in self-realization, the clean-hearted yogi easily attains the boundless ecstasy of contacting the divine. He realizes the supersoul. Such yoga is of a devotional nature. Thus absorbed in self-realization, the clean-hearted yogi easily attains the boundless ecstasy of contacting the divine. He realizes the supersoul. Such yoga is of a devotional nature. So there we're saying that the Bhakti yoga is the supreme yoga because when one attains the goal of yoga, one is engaged in the service of the Lord, and that is Bhakti yoga. All other forms of yoga are meant to bring one to that point of understanding one's relationship with the Supreme. And that is, as I was explaining, we're the eternal servants of the Lord. So, sarva bhuta stam atmanam sarva bhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshana. Sarva bhuta stam atmanam sarva bhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshana. His consciousness united with the infinite, the master of yoga sees the universal spirituality. He sees the supreme soul within all beings, and all beings within the supreme. His consciousness united with the infinite, the master of yoga sees the universal spirituality. He sees the supreme soul within all beings, and all beings within the supreme. So one who is on that level of realization understands that the Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. Sarvasya chaham ridi sanivisto mata smritir jnanamapolanam cha. Vedais cha sarvairaham eva vedyo vedantakrid vedavideva chaham. That the Lord is in everyone's heart, and also that within the heart is Atma and Paramatma. We are Atma, we are Jiva souls, and Paramatma, the Supreme Lord. So one has that vision. He can see that the Lord is the master of all living entities, and the Lord is in everyone's heart. And that everyone we are seeing, they are all individual souls, and they are all servants of that same Supreme Lord. So if we have that vision, then we'll see the Lord present everywhere, and everywhere so many innumerable souls in all species of life, and they're all eternal servants of the Lord. So one has that vision. His consciousness united with the infinite, the master of yoga sees the universal spirituality. He sees the supreme soul within all beings, and all beings within the supreme. Yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mayi pashyati tashyaham na pranashyami sacha me na pranashyati. Yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mayi pashyati tashyaham na pranashyami sacha me na pranashyati. For one who sees me in everything, and everything in me, I am never lost to him, and he is never lost to me. For one who sees me in everything, and everything in me, I am never lost to him, and he is never lost to me. Because we're trying to maintain that fixed vision of that understanding that we're seeing everything in relationship with the Lord and not seeing anything as separate from the Lord. So that is the difference. Normally in this world, people will be lost in trying to achieve their own enjoyment. And we see in Vrindavan the example that everyone in Vrindavan, if you look what it appears that they're all persons of this world, engaged in what would appear to many as to be mundane activities. But Krishna is present there. Vrindavan is the land of Krishna, and everyone is not thinking of Krishna. Although Krishna is the Supreme Lord, such as it's mentioned in the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. He's the cause of all causes. He's the Supreme Lord, and he's the cause of all causes. And Ishvara Parama Krishna, he's the Supreme Ishvara. Satchidananda Vigraha, he has an eternally, spiritually conscious body, form. Vadaischa Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Govinda. He's the cause of all causes. Anadir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. He's the source of all causes, and this is he's explained as being the Supreme Lord, and yet in Vrindavan, nobody is thinking of Krishna as the Lord. They're all thinking as Krishna as their friend, as their lover, as their son, as their playmate. Like they're thinking in that way, and by an external appearance, it would look that the Vrindavan just appears like a village, and they're cowherd boys and cowherd girls. But Krishna is showing himself in that situation. He's the cause of all causes, and Ishvara Parama, I'm trying to remember it, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. There is no cause. There is no cause for Krishna. He's the Lord. He's always existing. And he's the cause of all causes. Anyway. Sarvabhuta stitam yo mam bhajati ekatvam ashtita sarvata vartmano vartamanopi sayogi mai vartate. Sarvabhuta stitam yo mam bhajati ekatvam ashtita sarvata vartamanopi sayogi mai vartate. The yogi who takes shelter of me and adores me in my non-different form is a super soul, situated within the heart of every living being, abides in me in all circumstances. The yogi takes shelter of me and adores me in my non-different form as a super soul, situated within the heart of every living being, abides in me in all circumstances. So the super soul is like the expansion of the Lord in all living entities in one's heart, and you can see like one example given is the sun will appear if you have many pots filled with water. That you will see the reflection in all those different pots of water. But there's one sun, but it appears reflected in different pots of water. So the Lord is, by his expansion, present in everyone's heart. Although the Lord is one, but we see the expansions, which you can compare to a reflection of the Lord in everyone's heart. So the yogi who takes shelter of me and adores me in my non-different form as a super soul, situated within the heart of every living being, abides in me in all circumstances. So that yogi is able to see the one Lord present in the hearts of so many living entities as an expansion of super soul. And the yogi will meditate and understand that the Lord is present in one's heart. Then in the Svetasvatara Upanishad, it describes that there are like two birds situated in the branches of a tree. And one bird is enjoying, jumping from branch to branch and tasting all the fruits that's growing on those branches. And some of those fruits are sweet, and some of them are sour. Maybe some are sweet, and some are rotten, sour. But the other bird is just waiting for his friend to finish with his enjoying business, and then fly off together. So the Lord, who is sometimes said to be the witness, who sing all our different witnessing, Lord, is watching, and we as the jiva souls are trying to squeeze enjoyment out of this world. And then, but that Lord is always present with us, and he is said to be like a witness. So, Atmo pamyena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjuna sukham va yadi va dukam sayogi paramo mata. Atmo pamyena sarvatra Atmo pamyena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjuna sukham va yadi vadukam sayogi paramo mata. I consider the best of all yogis to be the one who knows the happiness and unhappiness of all beings as his own. I consider the best of all yogis to be the one who knows the happiness and unhappiness of all beings as his own. Arjuna Vacha Yoyam Yogas Tvaya Prokta Samyena Madhusudana Eta Shyaham Na Pashyami Chanchalatvat Stitam Stiram. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, because of the fickle nature of the mind, I cannot conceive how one can maintain the equilibrium in yoga that you have described. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, because of the fickle nature of the mind, I cannot conceive how one can maintain the equilibrium in yoga that you have described. So not to be taken lightly, and Arjuna says that I do not see this as being so easily attainable. He says, because of the fickle nature of the mind, my mind is fickle, I cannot conceive how one can maintain this kind of equilibrium in yoga that you have described. Chanchalam imana Krishna brahmati balavadridam tashyaham nigraham manye vayor eva sudushkaram. O Krishna, the mind is fickle, turbulent, obstinate, and very powerful. I consider controlling it to be more difficult than controlling the wind. Now, this is very precise, a very true statement of Arjuna. He says, O Krishna, the mind is fickle, turbulent, obstinate, and very powerful. I consider controlling it to be more difficult than controlling the wind. So then, Krishna answers him. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Konteya Vairagyena Chag Griyate. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Konteya Vairagyena Cha Griyate. The Supreme Lord said, O heroic Arjuna, undoubtedly the mind is fickle and extremely difficult to control. However, O son of Kunti, it is possible by practice and detachment. So these two things, very much necessary. The Supreme Lord said, O Arjuna, O heroic Arjuna, undoubtedly the mind is fickle and extremely difficult to control. However, O son of Kunti, it is possible by practice and detachment. So constantly practicing and endeavoring, and also detachment, being detached from the enjoyment of this mundane, of the senses and the body. Asam yatmana asamyatatmana yogo dushprapya asamyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me mati vashyatmana tu yadata shakyo vaptum upayata asamyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me mati vashyatmana tu yadata shakyo vaptum upayata. I consider that yoga is difficult to attain for the person of unrestrained mind, but one who strives to restrain the mind by the appropriate practice can succeed in yoga. I consider that yoga is difficult to attain for the person of unrestrained mind, but one who strives to restrain the mind by the appropriate practice can succeed in yoga. So then Arjuna has some more questions, but because it's a little late, I'll stop here and at our next reading we'll take up the further questions of Arjuna. But Arjuna starts out by saying, he says, O Madhusudana, because of the fickle nature of the mind, I cannot conceive how one can maintain the equilibrium in yoga that you have described. I consider, O Krishna, the mind is fickle, turbulent, obstinate, and very powerful. I consider controlling it to be more difficult than controlling the mind, than controlling the wind. O Krishna, the mind is fickle, turbulent, obstinate, and very powerful. I consider controlling it to be more difficult than controlling the wind. The Supreme Lord said, O heroic Arjuna, undoubtedly the mind is fickle and extremely difficult to control. However, O son of Kunti, it is possible by practice and detachment. I consider that yoga is difficult to attain for the person of unrestrained mind, but one who strives to restrain the mind by the appropriate practice can succeed in yoga. And we would add, and we'll hear more from Arjuna about how much difficulty there is in this form of practice of yoga, but we also understand that the form of bhakti yoga can be done not by just trying to on the basis of one's own willpower, always trying to restrain the senses, but actually by trying to develop a higher taste, by trying to attain some higher form of happiness, which will come in the association of other devotees in the glorification of the Lord. So we'll talk about these things at our next reading. Today is Thursday, so Monday. Okay. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jaravaya Nama Janavaya Maravaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Garanara Shiva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatana Bhakta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhakta Dasa Raghunath Echai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jahoy Te Vignana Shabishta Puran Echai Gosai Jarmui Taradas Asaba para renu mora panchagras. Tare charana sevi bhakta sanibas. Janame more abhilas. Echai gosai jabe brante koilabas. Radha Krishna nitya lila korila prakash. Anande bolo hari bhaja vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava pade manjai aman. Shri Guru Vaishnava pad padma koriyas. Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratamuda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Jo Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Charyashta Tara Sadashi Srimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajaka Charyashta Tara Sadashi Srimad Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jagat Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnavas Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Bharga Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath, Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Premsigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasudeva, Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vishvavaranya Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Madhacharya Vrinda Ki Jai, Anandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Sri Ram Mayapur Ki Jai, Saparshada Sri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai, Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai, Sri Kuladvip Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai, Soquel Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ashram Ki Jai, Ganga Devi Ki Jai, Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan, Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Shri Kartik Vrata ki jai, Shri Damodar Vrata ki jai, Shri Niyama Seva ki jai, Shri Urja Vrata ki jai. All the assembled devotees ki jai. Gaur Brahmanande Hari Hari Bol.